And welcome back to another Inside Texas live segment. It's here with Pac again. Pac-Man. I always want to call you Pac-Man. Can't do it, though. Your Pac Talks XOs. You're a lot more relevance than just eating dots. But Pac's here to join me again. We're talking what Texas has done right so far, and then some things that maybe we haven't done right, and which things we got to see fixes on now, and maybe how costly it could be if we don't see improvement in those areas. So first things first, Pac, how we doing? And thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Hey, doing good, man. Long week of only 4 day week here. We got fair week down here in Como County, so the kids are out of school tomorrow, and maybe get to sleep in for a few minutes. But it is Ryder Cup season, so I'm not sleeping in much. I think they're teeing off at like 6:10. Anyways, we're talking Texas football, not Ryder Cup right now. All right, Pac, we're going to start with the offensive side of the ball because I think that is the side of the ball that has a few more question marks, a little bit more. A smaller amount of success, rather. I'm trying to be not go overboard here because I do think that we saw an improvement last week, even with it being Sam Houston State. So let's start with offense. We're going to start with Arch Manning. We're going to start with the passing game, okay? We'll touch on the offensive line as a whole and pass blocking, run blocking. But as far as Arch Manning, as far as the passing game, concepts-wise, maybe mechanics-wise for Arch, what are some things that we need to see improved, and what are some things that Texas has done well so far?
Yeah, I think it starts with continuing to improve upon from what we saw with Sam Houston State. I thought he did a better job with his base. Thought his footwork was a lot cleaner. It was more consistent in terms of it wasn't too narrow, it wasn't too wide. You didn't see him lock out his front knee, or you didn't see him lean onto his front side. But that's all stuff that's got to keep improving. You got to stay consistent there. And then I think it's just throwing with more touch. I think that's something that he's really struggled with early in the season, something that you've seen where he's throwing balls into the dirt and he's not able to hit second level receivers on those digs because he's not lofting it over defenders and giving and putting in the bread basket for receivers. That's something that's got to improve. And then for receivers, you gotta make catches, right? Can't be dropping passes. We've seen that be a little bit of a recurring issue. That's got to get fixed up. And then they've got to keep doing a good job in terms of blocking. I thought they've done a really good job in the screen game. That's something that you've got to see more of. You've got to see more creativity in the pass game, whether that's through screens or quick game or getting into those play designs that Sark's really famous for. But I thought he took a good step against Sam Houston State. A lot of the stuff that you want to see cleaned up was starting to get cleaned up by Sam Houston State, and should be good heading into Florida in a week.
And you got to think that you're going to see some really positive practices, assuming that Arch Manning is hitting guys running open. One thing that maybe you didn't compliment or did. I'm curious on your thoughts though, but I think Sark has actually schemed really well for the most part in the passing game. I think there has been a lot of yards there. We haven't seen a lot of the deep ball stuff, but again, we've seen a lot of three high safety looks and not a lot of opportunities to take those shots. But overall, yeah, I think Arch Manning definitely mechanically made some improvements. He seemed a lot more decisive mentally, which is naturally going to help a guy like him who's already got really strong mechanics. They've just been breaking down, and I probably get laughed at. But in practice, the guy's had good mechanics and has for a long time. And so to see the breakdowns, hey, it is what it is. Saw some improvement, but now, of course, you want to see it against a bigger, better, faster, stronger defense, and you're going to get that week in and week out going forward in the SEC. I mean, there's really not a week off with anybody. There's nobody. There is no Vanderbilt anymore. Vanderbilt is ranked 18th in the country. But for me, I agree with you on the screen game aspect. We got to get more better in the quicks, and so that's been a big element of Steve Sarkisian offenses since he's been here. And was at Alabama, they had so many deep shots there with Devontae Smith and that slew of receivers, Waddle, all those guys. I mean, because they were so good at the quick stuff, so good underneath. So it was like every double move, everything worked deep. And again, you weren't seeing a lot of three high safety defenses in the SEC at that time. Let's see what we got here from Mr. David Keith Williams. Thanks for watching the show. And before we do that, guys, let's go ahead and hop on over to InsideTexas.com. Like and subscribe. All right, y'all do that while y'all do that real quick. So number one source for Texas insider news, recruiting scoop, in-depth analysis. You join for $1 right now, and you get a free free year access to the Athletic, a full free year. So hop on that, take advantage while you can. But yeah, back to the show here, Pack. And Mr. Williams had a comment there. We're going to throw it back on the screen. Although Arch Manning made a great throw to Dre Moore on the deep crossing route, the route seems to be the most ineffective at its short crossing route. You know, that's definitely been an issue. I mean, you can't hit the mesh routes, the speed outs. We've been talking about that on this channel for the last couple of weeks. The very simplistic concepts and routes, the free yards that Sark has drawn up, we haven't been able to take advantage of those. And so that's a good, we've got to be able to hit those things, and naturally it'll open up everything else. And again, with the 3 eye safeties that we're going to see over and over and over, you got to take advantage of that, because you're going to have to hit multiple short things. Going to have to be creative at times in the short game, but you're going to have to hit those to sustain drives against some of these really good SEC defenses. Any thoughts on that comment there, Pack?
Yeah, I think he's right. Some of that just comes down to the footwork that we were talking about, where he's opened up a bit too much, or he's staying closed on his front side, and he's not able to get enough whip, and so balls are ending up behind receivers, stuff like that, where you expect that to get cleaned up as he becomes more mechanically clean, as he cleans up his base, as he gets through his upper body a bit better, and he's driving through his core and getting his front side unlocked, opening it up. Stuff like that will be fixed, you hope, as he gets more mechanically clean. And you saw some improvement on that against Sam Houston State, right? And that's only a good sign. You can only take that as a good thing, and you just hope that that continues. And you kind of see it as this is a building block. Last week was, and then going to the bye week, having more time to clean up the mechanics. I don't know that this is going to be a real issue going forward, where I think you'll start to see those short crossers to guys like DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo run for grass and be positive explosives for Texas, just because I think Arch Manning's become more mechanically clean. And I think some of those routes that end up behind receivers aren't going to be occurring as much.
Yeah, and hopefully he's mentally and mechanically clean, because I mean that's been the issue in our opinion. He between the ears, again, mind has been so sped up, guys, that it's caused so many issues, mechanic issues, progression issues, and then obviously the way that he's actually thrown the football. So good point there. I think Wingo is going to be a big boon in the short game, the quick stuff, and you gotta be able to hit that, man. It's 3 yards. Sark is really good at dialing it up. We saw that with Ohio State, even some free crossers. But you do have to give Arch credit for the couple of dots that he threw last week. The throw to Dre was layered pretty well. It's in between 2 defenders and not a really big window. You don't see a ton of college quarterbacks really even making that throw, and a lot of these simple read systems. But yeah, that's a good point, Ashley. He threw a couple dots. He really did, and give him credit for that. And we need to see that all season. And even if he's not just fitting in dots, just doing some of the simple stuff that we weren't doing early on, that alone is going to get you to moving the football and having the opportunity to get back in the red zone. And hopefully Texas shores those issues, or continues to shore up some of the red zone issues. Speaking of that, did you have an issue in the first third of the season, essentially how Texas kind of attacked in the red zone? So we had issues at times, didn't always punch it in, had a couple turnovers. But what are your thoughts overall on red zone play and how Texas approached it?
Yeah, I just think there's not an identity there. And that kind of feels like that's been an issue for a couple of years now, but it doesn't really feel like Texas has an identity in terms of what do they want to be in the red zone, whether they want to be a spread football team and we're just going to become QB draw when we need to, and we're going to try to pass our way to the end zone. We're going to run a lot of motion and get into a lot of rub routes, get into a lot of pick routes, or if we're going to be a power football team and we're going to get into I and we're just going to run it down your throat. It just doesn't feel like they have a set identity. They're trying to do too much of both. They don't have one thing that they want to do in the red zone. So I think until they figure out what their identity is going to be in the red zone, you're going to continue to see, and it's going to feel like the red zone is a real issue for this offense.
I mean, yeah, you got to figure it out, man, because opportunities to score the football, you have a really dang good defense. If you can find ways to turn these drives that we're going to have to sometimes be long drives, and DCs are going to want to prove that Arch can go underneath and Texas can run the football. So yeah, when you get inside the red zone, I don't think we're going to have the opportunities maybe that we had last year. Could be wrong. Maybe the roof comes off on this offense, but yeah, you got to be able to turn 3 into 6. And to me, I like lot of 11 personnel and running the heck out of Arch Manning, staying with the quick game, quick mesh still. And then you can turn some double moves. We saw a couple with, Texas last year. But another thing is, like, I'd still like to see the backs coming out of the backfield in the red zone. You saw Jaden Blue. Obviously, we don't have that type of athlete, that type of speed coming out of the backfield this year. But still some guys that can catch the dang football and hopefully, break a tackle. Talked about some issues with that. But I still want to see the backs, just another guy to account for in the passing game. And again, a lot of teams are conceding underneath on everything to Texas over the last couple of years. And think about how we scored on a really good Ohio State defense, both times last year in the Cotton Bowl using Jaden Blue's speed. Again, we don't have that type of guys. Tricky, but not too tricky. Like Pac said, you want to have some power. You want to, be able to do the tough yards. Because last year I thought we were a bit too tricky at times, or a bit too finesse even. A little gadgety, and I didn't love all that. You want to be able to line up and say, hey, this was what's coming, and we're going to pick it up. You know what I mean? Just man on man there. Little old school football. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Connor's struggling. I'm not going to put some of those comments up there, but I mean, this is as a guy, again, similar to an Arch Manning, who has also struggled, but is very early in his tenure as a starter for Texas, and we'll continue to see what happens with Neto, but that left guard spot has been an issue and it needs to be improved upon, and we'll get into that later on. But in the passing game, overall, their yardage is there. There's points there. Arch is going to have to hit some of these things, and again, we're talking underneath stuff, intermediate stuff is going to have to be improved upon. Anything else regarding the passing game or how Texas is attacking some of these three high offenses through the air before we move on to the ground?
No, I think it's kind of what we talked about last week, where you're going to have to get into more quick game and try to get those safeties to play downhill a bit quicker, so that way you can force them out of three high. Obviously, you have to be able to run the ball, but I think it's kind of what we talked about last week, where Arch has got to get the ball out quick. He's got to be accurate, let guys create after the catch, and if you do that, you'll have success against three high and you'll force them out of it.
Yeah, good point. Ashley is pleading for another big man touchdown. Hey, they're always fun to see the big guys get in the end zone. And again, what a fun Big 12 championship game, watching Texas just absolutely thump Oklahoma State in front of the old commissioner. But yeah, my last point is the one that I meant to bring up immediately, but Josh, you said it for me at the very end. Get Jack Andrews involved. And again, we've seen how explosive a tight end can be in a Steve Sarkisian offense. We saw a Washington touchdown last week on a big play on a leak, and 35, 36 yards there. He'll be involved at some point, in my opinion. I definitely think that you've had other guys and other connections that you've really had to put an emphasis on working. Obviously, Ryan Wingo, Jerry Moore comes back. You want to get him implemented. You want to get him involved in the quick stuff. That's something we've got to be able to do, as we've been ranting about for the last 13 minutes. So to me, it's like, just be patient. We had some. To me, I had a pretty lottie stat expectation out of Jack Andrews for this year that I don't think, we're probably getting to those numbers, but I think he is going to be a big part of the offense, and I hope he's really, really big part of the offense in the red zone. Where you see Sark being tricky the most, in my opinion, it comes with the screen game and a lot of times with the tight ends and how they're involved in the offense. So Ashley wants some trickeration. To me, it's how Sark uses his tight ends. He can get pretty deceptive with it and does it really, really well. So. All right. Yeah. In the red zone, hey, we used a Jatavian Sanders. I hate that my first thought of him in the red zone is when he got blown up in the Cotton Bowl. We did a turn and got over on that snap. But, he did seem to strike from a little bit further out. Gunnar Helm was pretty dang good in the red zone, though. You got to give him that. Gunnar was real strong in the red zone last year. Let's see here. Arch definitely brings another dimension of the offense by running, but coach cannot make him a common threat to run. Fully agree with you, man. I don't know about the 5 carries. I think, honestly, we're going to have to just be a little bit more, not necessarily hero ball, but he's just going to have to be a little bit more involved in that. Maybe designed carries. I was thinking like 7 to 8. We're going to see some good defenses, and we've seen an offensive line and a ground game that's, struggled a little bit. What are your thoughts on that, Pack, as far as a total amount of carries that you're thinking is a healthy amount? It's tough because I agree. You don't want to sit here and say, hey, come take your shots, come stand up quarterback one and rip at him, because you think about all these other defenses that are just like, oh, I'd love to do that to a Manning. Sorry, what you got back?
Yeah, I think you do want Arch to be running a little bit more, whether that's 5 carries, 7 carries. I think you need it to be involved just because of how it changes the way teams fit the run. When you have a quarterback who can run, teams aren't going to play as much too high on you just because they're going to end up being with bad box numbers where they're going to be -2 in the count, stuff like that, where when you have a real threat at quarterback who can run, that changes the way defenses can play their coverages. It gives you more multiplicity in terms of how you attack teams. It makes it easier in your pass game. So I don't know how much. You just needed enough to make sure that teams are having to respect Manning's legs. I think also it seems to get him in the game and gets him into the game flow. We saw against Ohio State after he got his legs involved a little bit more. It felt like he was more comfortable. It's kind of been the story pretty much every week for him outside of obviously last week. It felt like he just had it on from the start of the game. But to me, I think you have to run him just because you don't necessarily have that home run hitter. So you need to be able to make the run game easier in some way. Makes edge players have to play more disciplined as well, where they can't bend and chase because they need to respect the keep for Manning. Changes the way teams are going to play coverage. So whether that's 5 carries a game that are designed, 3 carries, 7 carries, I don't know that it matters the attempts, more so the intent and actually being able to force teams to change up the way they're playing Texas.
I agree with you, man. And I mean, it has to be well timed. You know what I mean? Like you got to be smart about it. Again, you've had some counter concepts that have worked well with Manning. Again, I think the zone read type concept with an RPO, the modernized zone read. That could be beneficial. We've seen a little bit of that out of Texas, but we talked a little bit about Arch Manning in the ground game. We'll talk more about the Texas ground game, but first, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor, David McClellan.
Big financial decisions don't have to feel overwhelming. There's someone who can guide you every step of the way. David McClellan is a fiduciary financial advisor with Forum Financial, and he's working closely with his clients as a true financial life coach, guiding every aspect of your financial journey with expertise and care. If his name sounds familiar, that's because David was a swimmer at Texas and a member of several national championship teams. Today, he channels that same championship mindset into helping people win with their finances. David specializes in financial planning, and he's contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. And right now, David is offering viewers a free intro consultation to assess your financial situation. Do not miss this chance to get personalized guidance from a trusted expert. To schedule your free consult, email David at dmcclellan@forumfinancial.com, or you can call him directly at 312-933-8823. The contact info is in the description.
All right, guys, hit up old David when needed. Ashley did hit UTEP in the Wingo, or he did hit UTEP in the Wingo. He hit Wingo in the UTEP game. He does need to stay accurate. I'm going to try to get a lot of these comments throughout the show up here on the screen. Appreciate you being here, Pax. Thanks for tuning in and showing some love. But yeah, I mean, in the ground game, Pack, what concepts are you seeing that have worked so far? Again, you've explained that you have to be able to run zone, you have to be able to run some gap scheme stuff. So talk to us about which of those you've liked out of Texas and what you think we see more of in the future. And then if is there anything that we kind of need to push to the side, at least for now? Just overall thoughts on the ground game as far as when it's Arch Manning really. I guess he's going to be a part of the ground game. So if he's involved too, just talk to me about it all.
Yeah, I've really liked how we've blocked counter. I think that's been one of our better run plays. I think we've done a good job in duo and inside zone. It feels like outside zone right now hasn't been very good. I thought we've done a pretty decent job in terms of how we've ran split zone. You can maybe see if you can run outside split zone where you're swiping a tight end back, because you can work some bootleg and you can work some different plays off of that, whether that's RPO slide and all that stuff. But to me, I think you stay with inside zone, duo, counter, and then you can throw in stuff like trap against certain teams that are who run a lot of stunts or who drop their 3 technique into the A gap, whether they're slanting or spiking. You can do those things, but to me, I think it's got to be mostly inside zone, duo, and then counter, whether that's GT counter, GY counter, CY counter, whatever it is. I think that's kind of what you got to start with. And then again, if you feel comfortable with outside zone and it's looking good in practice, I think you can run it out there for a couple snaps and see how it goes. But to me, that would almost be like a secondary thing. And it's in general, I think outside zone is one of those things where you need to major in it. It has to be the main thing you do if you're going to do it. And I just think they do a better job blocking inside zone and duo right now. So I'm almost tempted to just abandon outside zone and then stick with the different stuff that you do with counter and duo and inside zone. And then if you want to attack the perimeter more, you can always run toss sweep, buck sweep, pin and pull, get rocket sweeps in there. You can be creative and get the ball on the outside and use that as a changeup rather than outside zone being that changeup.
I agree with you there, man, because, UTEP, I think we've talked about on the show before, but I mean, 21 attempts on the outside zone at like 3 yards a clip. That's struggling. It's UTEP too. We're going to see a lot more athletic and quick defenses. And again, with the 3 high safeties, everybody's playing just straight downhill on us. Eyes are. It's just such an easy read there, and if you're not blocking it perfectly, it can blow up pretty quickly. But again, I agree with you on the inside zone duo. It seems that Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood that's the trend line. We're moving more towards that. I think the arch counters, we're going to have to continue to see him in that. You're going to have tags off of it. I think, again, that we missed one against Ohio State with injuries. But things like that, I know that was split zone there, but be creative. Again, continue to see what this offensive line can do in counter, because I think it's better than, we kind of blocked it in the past, and not that we really blocked much of it in the past, but with Quinn Ewers, with Arch, the offense, two different things. So Arch gives you the ability to run some of those counters and gun things with him. But overall, man, is there anything that you would do if you were Kyle Flood, just from a starting offensive line standpoint? Are you comfortable with what Stroh has been doing? Do you need to see more out of him? But yeah, what are your thoughts there?
I'd like to see what Nick Brooks looks like at left tackle. I'd also like to see what it looks like with Nate Kibble out there. I thought they both had good games against Sam Houston, which, again, it's Sam Houston, but I like to just see what it looks like with someone else at left guard, just to see if also competition's a good thing. Force Stroh to really have to take his game up to the next level. But I think the left side, outside of Gooseby, that feels like a real area that could be much improved. So I'd want to try different things at left guard and kind of see what works best.
You meant left guard for Brooks? Is that what you?
Yeah.
You said left tackle, but making sure. I was like, man,
left guard.
What did Gooseby do to Pat, guys? Yeah, and that's part of it. Even Gooseby is still, this is still a guy that has barely started over a half dozen college football games now, and so, if he started over a half dozen, Pax. I know that was a thing in the past. We had Andres Karich coming in, and you ran some overload stuff, and obviously you just had some really, really big bodies. But that's also against some smaller Big 12 defenses that we were really, really leaning on. I don't know. I think, like Pat just said, you continue to try things. You know what I mean? You got a couple of different linemen, especially at left guard there, between Neto, between Connor Stroh, and then the way that some of these younger guys are practicing, like a Nick Brooks. I think Kibble eventually is going to be a big part of that offensive line in the ground game. Not saying this year, obviously, but continue to experiment, man. Because we have struggled there. Again, I would love for Connor Stroh to just figure it out. But again, it seems struggles a little bit with footwork, and need him to just get a little bit nastier, man. To be honest with you, again, better against the Sam Houston State, but it is Sam Houston State. So let's see it after a bye week. Let's see it in the swamp. Texas is going to get judged a lot of ways, from the national folks, the way that we look in that Florida game, especially early on, man. The tweets on everything at halftime, it's going to just be bonkers. But yeah, that's the thing. We are what we are, and Connor and I have talked about this. At some point, the low line is just what it is. And so at this point, you get some of these better defenses. That's why I am thinking okay, we do need a little bit more Arch Manning just for the numbers, just to be +1 in the ground game. And that's why I started when I said 7 or 8 carries, that's where I start to think, because I don't really see the ground game just improving tenfold. I think there are a few things that they do well. I've seen some really, really well blocking counters. I've seen some inconsistency there too, which can blow up a play pretty quickly depending on what's going on. But I don't know, Pac. You think it is what it is at this point? Do you see? Let me ask you this: how much improvement do you think Texas offensive line has the potential to make? Do you see Texas having by season's end? I'll ask you this: make it simpler. By season's end, do you see Texas having we'll go top 6 offensive line in the SEC? There's a couple.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And yes, because I do think that again, it's kind of like quarterback. The more reps, the better you'll look. The more communication you'll have, the more comfortable you'll be reading each other and knowing when to get off a combo block and work up to a linebacker, an inside zone. You'll know what this guy's going to base block, so I don't need to help him here. I can pull a little bit earlier. I can now arc my tight end because I trust my tackle to get over in space, that type of stuff, where you just get more comfortable with the 4 guys next to you. You're naturally going to get better at O-line. I think it's a really communication heavy position. So I think in general, the pass pro has been pretty good. And I think there's definitely moments where you can see that the offensive line's doing a really good job of blocking. Again, I always look back to that Ohio State game where I think Texas ran for almost 4.5 yards a carry. So I think that tells you that there is some potential here to be a really good rushing offense. And then some of it also comes down to the fact that you haven't had Trey Wisner or CJ Baxter together fully healthy since Ohio State. And that could change up a lot of the way the offensive line looks, where backs may not be reading blocks correctly, stuff like that. So I'll say, yeah, they end up top 6. I think there's a lot of things that can obviously get cleaned up, but this is why you trust Kyle Flood. That's why he gets paid the way he does to clean up those things.
Pax, I mean, he kind of agrees with you. He sees the upside because of the Ohio State game, and I'm not trying to be overly hard on him. And honestly, like, they don't have to be perfect because Texas is eventually going to really figure things out in the passing department, in my opinion, which is going to force defenses to sit back because Sark is a really, really good and very creative play caller, and he does like to take shots. He has a quarterback that is pretty accurate downfield. So, you know, if a defense wants to hang around in a football game with Texas, you know, getting in a shootout with our defense that we have is not, there's just not a lot of blueprints and paths to victory other than the 3 high defense and really making and just or even a lot of 2 high and really keeping it the best you can, everything in front of you. But even that, I think Sark will do a pretty good job picking man coverage apart until we get to maybe a couple of these secondaries that I think athletically can match up with us pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I can say in the Ohio State game, the ground, Texas ran the football. The O-line looked better than I thought it would, And then I thought we saw some regression, the next week. And then UTEP was a mess. Again, and then same as Sam. So a huge opportunity for Arch Manning, huge opportunity for the offensive line. Obviously, this offense needs to continue the confidence building, continue, to my opinion, have some attitude, man, because that's what you've seen out of Arch Manning last year in several spots. Obviously, in the games that he started, an electric mindset, very, very jubilated at times. We need to see that out of Arch. I'm doing everything I can to not say the word swagger, man, and I like flunked so hard. But we saw Mikhail Field with the double thumbs down. I want to see those things. And so again, I know that there's a lot of talk about the Sam Houston stuff, and it may be a bit too much. But continue to see this Texas offense be confident away from DKR for the next month. It's going to be a huge month for this offense. Not going to be at home. Going to be loud at the Cotton Bowl, in the Swamp at the Cotton Bowl. I don't know what Kentucky will look like, to be honest, but I guarantee you the Cowbells are probably going to be ramped up to another level since they have Texas coming into the Starkville for the very first time as SEC members. So it's a big month, man. Overall, I've got confidence in this offense. I really, really do. I think that we're going to see improvement. I think, again, that Sark is one of the best schemers in the game. This bye week, in my opinion, is going to be very beneficial. I think we go in with a pretty buttoned-up game plan. I see a lot of the things that Pack and I have kind of been talking about, the gap scheme stuff, counter scheme stuff in the ground game. and then hopefully Arch Manning hitting, the easy stuff, the bread and butter across the middle, the underneaths, and maybe that opens up and Ron Roberts gets overly aggressive, and we catch the Gators, catch them napping. But all right, Pac, we're going to move to the defense. Again, probably going to be a whole different type of conversation, more of maybe like an experimental conversation, what we could do. Texas has been tinkering a lot. But first, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Laura Baker.
If you're looking for a home in the Austin area, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. Laura's a part of the elite Andy Allen team at Keller Williams Realty. She's helped Longhorns find their dream homes all over Central Texas. You can just ask our very own Ian Boyd, who moved from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Whether you're searching in Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown, San Marcos, or even parts of the 254 or the 210, Laura has you covered. So call 512-784-0505, or you can email her at laura@andyallenteam.com. She's a Longhorn, a friend of Inside Texas, and the person you need to call to get your next home in Central Texas. Call Laura Baker today. Contact info is in the description.
I mean, Pac, you got family up north. Get them down in Austin. Give Laura a call. Get her some business. You know what I mean? That's it's too cold. I can't do the northern winters. I've never been.
I really like it, actually. It's weird.
You're not a golfer though, man. You don't golf.
I'm horrible.
No, man. You're just inexperienced. I just play. I tell everybody I'm not better than them at golf. I just play a lot more golf than they play. And I'll give you a good point here, David, on this comment. We have only given up 3 sacks. Now, let me tell you this. Again, the issues that we've seen on the offensive line have been much more in the run blocking than the pass blocking. I think that the offensive line have actually done a really good job. And coming into the season, I thought it'd be the flip side of that. I thought that we'd be a little better as a running department and in the running department than we were last year. And again, maybe that's just a product of Kyle Flood, and he's doing a little bit better coaching them up in pass protection. But pass protection, in my opinion, has been pretty good. Backs, in my opinion, and the effort's been strong. Everybody's kind of, taking one on the chin across the board at times. But overall, been very pleased with pass protection. So, all right, absolutely. You're always going to give Michael Taffas flowers. That guy, always in the right spot. Again, we'll see what PK kind of has schemed up for him in some of these bigger matchups. I think he, maybe trying to bait a quarterback or two. Assuming, can we do this first? So this is personal. This is not coming directly from anybody else on Inside Texas. This is my own source, if you will. But hearing that the timeline for John Mateer on the inside of, Oklahoma, they're saying 10 to 15 days, which is a far cry, obviously from what we heard when the initial news of the surgery came out. Just sharing my honest thoughts on that. They're being really, really loud about, and I'm hoping the kid is healthy, from the bottom of my heart, I mean it, but they're being very, very loud about how successful the surgery was. And it's not just your typical fans, it's people with inside the program. It's John Mateer. There's so much positivity about it. To me, it almost seems like the 10 to 15 days could be a bit of a smokescreen. It's going to be a little bit longer than that, but they definitely want Texas, South Carolina. They want them all prepping for, it's more so Texas right now, several weeks before they see South Carolina, but they want Texas to prepare for John Mateer as much as they can going into that game. That to me is really, really is hard to believe, but they really are. Y'all see, if you've been on Twitter, if any of you guys are on the X app now, I guess, they are everywhere. And so I don't know. What do you think? 10 to 15 days? Thumb surgery?
That sounds really optimistic. I'm not a sports doctor. I don't know how the hand works. I've never broken a bone in my hand. So, I'm not about to give a medical opinion, but if he's had to have surgery, that feels kind of optimistic that you'd be able to play in 2 weeks. Now, maybe it's one of those things where you can wear a brace on your thumb and you're fine. I don't know, but that seems pretty optimistic, especially based off of what we were hearing just yesterday, where it sounded like it was going to be anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. To get that down to 10 to 15 would be really, really impressive and would be a far cry from what we heard yesterday.
Right. And again, Casey Thompson actually broke his thumb in the Cotton Bowl versus Oklahoma. I believe it was at the end of the second quarter there, collided with a Sooner helmet, and he played the rest of that game and a few others, the rest of the season. Yeah, I mean, he played with a broken thumb. I don't know if you ever saw the picture of that, Victor, but man, his hand, I don't know if you saw it, Pack, that hand was it was crazy to look at. I didn't realize that a hand could swell to the size that it did just off a break. But I mean, I'm going to pop this one back up. I do want to play John Mateer. But again, like how smart, if he's not 100%, I mean, yeah, maybe 90+% is just football. People play banged up. I get it. You bring him back. It's just like that schedule is so difficult. And with the offensive line that they have, and the way that they run John Mateer, it's not like that hand. It's not like a straight drop back quarterback. This isn't like it's Kurt Warner in the early 2000s who's going to, or Rich Gannon, they're going to get the pill and they're going to fling it, man. Mateer is going to have to run the football for Oklahoma to have a chance to win that football game, the way that Michael Hawkins will probably have to be a part of the ground game if they're going to have a chance to win that game if he's a quarterback. So how beneficial, is it to bring him back, to rush him back? And again, don't read that as scared. I would like to play John Mateer. I think that we match up with him very, very well. But what are your thoughts on that, Pack? I mean, we'll get back to Texas and the defense really, really quickly. Is that something that, like, hey, if he's 80% healthy, you're trotting him back out? Or with the schedule that they have and the potential, the hot start, a win over Auburn, win over Michigan, you're putting him on the shelf till he's ready?
Yeah, especially if you can get him back by South Carolina or the week after. I think even with Michael Hawkins, I think they can beat South Carolina. South Carolina cannot protect Lenore Sellers right now, and that's a really big problem for them. I think that Oklahoma could win a rock fight against South Carolina. And if you leave that South Carolina game 5-1 or 6-1, whatever it would be, and you can get Mateer back, I think that's a net positive. You're still in the hunt for the SEC. You're most definitely still in playoff contention. But to me, I don't think it makes any sense to, if he's at 80%, if he's even at 90%, I'm not sure I'm putting him out there against Texas, especially with that O-line and this Texas D-line. That feels like you're putting him in harm's way pretty significantly, especially because they still cannot run the ball.
Right. I mean, he would have to play hero ball to have a prayer, in my opinion, for Oklahoma to break 20 points. And that's not to disrespect that offense. I respect that guy to Ben Arbuckle, but I know they just put up a banging 24 on Auburn. I'm just saying, I trust the Texas defense a lot more than I trust the Texas offense. I'm not sitting here guaranteeing Texas would win the football game. I feel good about it, but I don't like our matchup on offense versus their defense. It's the same way, that I feel Oklahoma. I think I said last night we might clamp them up a little bit, even with Mateers. It was a fun show last night. But I definitely I want to see the guy play. I want to see see him healthy. But at the same time, I'm with you. I don't think it's super beneficial. You're looking at 6-1 if you can win that game with South Carolina, because South Carolina doesn't have an offensive line, and they don't really have the back seven, in my opinion, to keep a Ben Arbuckle scheme. I think that he could get some guys loose. They probably only have to score 17, 20 points, to have a chance to win that game. And so, yeah, the back end of that schedule is pretty dang tough. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at, is like, man, we really got to have John Mateer for, like, hey, these last 4, these last 5. And with the start of their season, they kind of have the option where they don't necessarily have to rush him back against Texas. If they would have lost against Auburn, I feel like that's almost inevitable that he would have given it a go here and at least tested that thumb out. But again, I think you probably see him warm up either way. I think Eric Nalin mentioned that on the short yesterday. There's a chance that he warms up and doesn't go. I feel, pretty good that we do see him. I get it, man. But apparently this Dr. Shin guy, he's a magic man. He has worked on some other guys and got them back on the field pretty dang quickly. And so they're using that track record as a measure for their own quarterback. I get it. They want the guy out there, but we'll see. I would personally like a chance to play the kid. But all right, Pack, talk about the Texas defense now. I saw a comment earlier. It's way up there, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, but Jelani McDonald, man, what a guy, essentially a superstar almost that he's turning into being, with Texas losing a Jahdae Barron, with Texas losing an Andrew Makuba to the NFL, and those guys continue to play really well up there. Hey, can Texas find the same type of turnover production from this secondary He is a guy that immediately is answering, that question. Maybe see a couple other guys go ahead and step up and fill that role as well. But what are your thoughts on Jelani, just his overall play? Talk to the commenters. Tell us what makes him, what makes him special.
Yeah, I think he's done a really good job in coverage. Texas has run they've run more this year, especially of just true cover one. And he's been asked to cover slot receivers, whether that's a tight end or when teams motion into FIB, having to guard a true slot receiver. And he's done a really good job. It all starts with his eyes. You're taught as a DB, eyes on hips to knees. And a lot of the time, if you're going to play the way Texas plays cover one, you're starting it out at catch, or you're playing it out of a scooch, which just means you're going to play with your leverage foot up and then the other foot back. And then if you're scooching, you're going this foot, this foot, this foot, this foot, and you're just reading it, trying to see what the release is going to be. And I think his eyes have been really, really good. I've seen on tape, you can see it especially where they're tracking off the near hip, they're tracking off the leverage foot. He's not getting beat by these false releases, these diamond releases, cross releases. He's done a really good job in terms of staying disciplined when he's in coverage. And then we all know that he's a thumper, really good in the run game, really good getting downhill and being a force player, getting in there and making tackles. So, and he's been really, really good with the ball in the air. Obviously, we know he's a freak athlete. I still remember I was talking to someone about the Under Armour All-American game where he was playing corner. He went to go play linebacker. He played safety. He played star. He pretty much played everywhere, and he was really good. He was really good at every spot. So that just kind of speaks to how talented he is, and he's kind of just showing that. And then, like we said, it starts with really good eye discipline and really good footwork.
Yeah, man. I mean, you talk about discipline. That's my main takeaway from just the Texas secondary over the last two seasons. Talk about, how we don't see guys very, very often running in space the way that we did during the 2023 playoff run, looking at like the Oklahoma game. Even in the Alabama game, Jalen Milroe hit us deep a couple times, for 2 Alabama scores. They've continued to really, really work different things in the secondary. And again, having elite talent, experience, some of these guys have been waiting their turn. A lot of these guys, and pretty good tutelage, obviously. Past coaches, shout out to Blake Gideon, still obviously a Longhorn favorite. And then I think we see the Akina, already seeing some more man coverage, some more Akina technique. And so fun to see Texas be a little bit more sticky out there in coverage. Going to naturally lead to a little more turnovers, in my opinion, forcing the quarterbacks to put it in a little bit tighter spot at times, get more break on the ball. And again, I played basketball. I was a big basketball guy, all right? I was always a zone is for cowards guy. Okay, I love man coverage. Again, there's times obviously cover 3, the PK staple is very, very necessary. But love to have Coach Akina back in the fold. Let's go out to corner, man. Let's talk a little bit about there because there's still some question marks a little bit. We saw Texas Ward, freshman Grayson Littleton out at corner in place of Jalen Gilbo. You had Jelani working down at star. What were your thoughts on that? Is that something that you want to see more of? And would you predict it maybe to be what happens in the long run? Because it seems that, they've tried a couple different things. You do have Kobe Black out there who has battled injury a little bit, but you have him out there as a potential cornerback 2 candidate. But talk to me about maybe just all 3 of them if you'd like. And that in particular, though, but Grayson out there with Jelani down as the star position, Texas's nickelback.
Yeah, I really like Littleton. I think he does a good job outside. He's super patient in press. He doesn't get out of his box, so to speak, where you'll see this a lot with young DBs when they're shooting their hands. There's 2 different types where they'll play with their inside hand and they'll shoot, or they'll go with a 2-hand jam. He does a really good job of not having his feet too wide when he's jamming, having them nice and tight. So that way you can keep moving those feet, keeping them active, because the easiest way to get beat when you're in press is having your base be really wide and your hands shot out. You're not in an athletic position. You're not able to slide your feet and get into a proper shuffle and then into a cross run, right? So I thought Grayson Littleton's done a really good job of that. I think Malik Muhammad, he's kind of got that as an issue where you'll see times on tape where he's shooting his hands and all of a sudden his feet get too wide and now he's beat because he's not in a good position. He's having to reset his base, get it tight again, and he's taking extra steps. So that's kind of one of those things where you got to clean up your footwork. You got to get better at striking. You've got to do a better job of making sure that when you do strike your hands, you're doing it when a guy is in your arm length, right? You want them to be roughly about 3 feet away from you or less if you're going to shoot the hands. And really, it's about 2 feet because you can actually create contact. Or if you're doing it and you're barely touching them with your hand when you're striking, you're not going to bump anyone off your route. You don't have any strength in that moment. So you have to do a better job of knowing when to strike and knowing when to shift your feet and knowing what to do. And I think that's been something that's been a real problem in press, especially with Jalen Gilbo and Malik Muhammad early this year. But I think, especially with Malik Muhammad, he's really, really good in off man. He does a really good job of being able to stay square, knowing, and especially out of a shuffle, he's really explosive driving off. That's part of the reason why a lot of teams will play cover 3 with a shuffle technique, because it's a lot easier to drive down on balls. You don't have to T-step or get into a bicycle step. And Malik Muhammad is especially explosive with those drive steps. So, and on anything deep, it feels like he's done a good job. He hasn't been tested on anything deep, so you don't know what the ball skills look like. Obviously, we all remember the Clemson game where that was a real problem for him. So you have to see what that looks like in SEC play. And then talking about Jalen Gilbo, I've really thought he's struggled in press technique this year. I think that he does a really poor job of opening up too soon, where guys are giving him a false release where you'll see them shoot and they'll, if we're on the left sideline, where they'll look like they'll take a step or two to the left, but he's not doing a good job with his eyes, where guys, and if you watch the tape, you'll see this. And if you watch wide receiver releases, you'll see this. And Ghost, you'll know this because you were a wide receiver coach. Your hips and your knees never lie about where you're going, right? Your hips aren't going to turn left and then you go right. That's just not how the body works. And so that's why DB coaches will always tell you eyes on hips and knees, because they won't lie to you. They'll tell you where a guy's going, where if you read shoulders, I can do this and then I can go left. It doesn't matter. Like I'm an athletic position, but your hips won't let you do that. And you see Gilbo get beat with stuff like shoulder releases, and that's just a sign that his eyes aren't in the right spot. So I think he's really struggled from press, where he's getting beat across his face a lot just because he is opening up too soon and he's getting his hips turned, and now he's not in an athletic position to be able to flip his hips and run with the deep over or run with the post or run with the dig. I think he's been fine in off man. He does a good job of letting guys, quote unquote, win the race, and then knowing, okay, I'm going to play catch, which means I'm not about to keep backpedaling and giving them an 8-yard cushion so that way they can run the hitch and get a free 7-yard completion. I think he's done a good job in terms of being patient, letting guys win the race, and then getting in and playing and getting into a cross run. So I think he's done a good job when he's asked to play as a cover 3 corner. I haven't liked the tape from him as a true press corner, which I think is a real limiter. And then with Kobe Black, it's tough because you just haven't seen him play a lot. He's been hurt. He didn't get a ton of reps against Ohio State. So you just don't really know if he's looking good in practice. I like to see him and Malik Muhammad keeping Grayson Littleton at star. You could just rotate all 3 of them, all 4 of them, even putting Cade Phillips if you feel like he's ready. It doesn't necessarily need to be we're only going to play 2, but to me, I would like to see Grayson Littleton or Kobe Black get more opportunity to play outside Malik Muhammad.
All right, well, I got to put you on the spot after that. Give me your best 5, brother. Let's hear exactly what you would do. Obviously, we are going to know a few of these answers already, and you kind of just answered one, but just make it official for us.
Yeah, right now I would go Malik Muhammad, Grayson Littleton, Derek Williams, Jelani McDonald, and Michael Taff, and have Jelani at star, and then have your two safeties be Derek Williams and Michael Taff.
Yeah, I mean, with like you mentioned, Jelani's his ability to cover up a slot, and again, you got to give Grayson Littleton credit for the ability he's done at star. But again, and it's not a knock on Jalen, rooting for the kid, want him to figure it out. Got to work on some technique, got to work on eyes, again, a part of technique, because Texas has every bit the making of a national championship defense, in my opinion, but you have to figure a couple of things out, and you have the personnel to do so. This is the elite depth that Texas has been building, talking about. In my opinion, is showing now more than it ever has on that side of the football, because you look at our linebacker room, you look at our secondary. I mean, talked about Jonah Williams returning. It got mentioned in the comment. What's up, Warren boy? But it's we've got a lot to work with, and it's fun. And I'm curious to see how it looks going into Florida, and then with assuming Mateer, maybe he does come back, maybe he doesn't, maybe it is a smokescreen. But still, Arbuckle is going to throw shots to Texas. You know what I mean? He's not. That offense is going to look like it looked last year. They're gonna try to attack Texas. I don't care if it's Hawkins or Mateer. And then later in the year, we'll get some passing attacks. Stockton's look good. Marcel Reed's look good. So yeah, you do want to have things fixed and tightened up. But yeah, that linebacker room, man, that is nasty. Nasty. You basically every week we get on here and we're like, yep, that linebacker played great, that guy played great, this one played great, he did this different than last week, but it was still great. Anything that packages, anything that you kind of maybe dream up in your head, Pack, about seeing out of this linebacker room? Because for me, I mean, I love the speed of a Ty Anthony Smith, man, but you love the experience and the versatility of a Trey Moore. Obviously, Anthony Hill is Anthony Hill. You know what I mean? A lot you can do there, but what are your thoughts just on the linebacker room?
Yeah, I thought that there was a package that Texas brought in down near the goal line, the opposite goal line against Sam Houston, where they had Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Anthony Hill, and then I want to say it was Brad Spence all out there. So basically like a peso package where there were 2 defensive linemen and then 4 backers. I think they ended up I think it was a simulated pressure that they ended up bringing, and they played cover 1 behind it. Stuff like that I was really excited by. You can clearly see where Johnny Nanson's come in and kind of enhance some of the packages. But those are the types of packages I really like, when you can get those 4, where you got 4 guys that can really rush the passer, and you don't know which ones are coming and which ones aren't, and it creates a ton of stress for your protections. I've really liked those packages. I've really liked what I've seen from Ty Anthony Smith. I think he's done an incredible job fitting the run. I think he's done a really good job, especially because Texas is a ball fit run team, which means they're not playing based off of tight ends, or they're not playing based off of guards. They're tempoing off the ball. They're going to stack defensive linemen. They're going to stack gaps, and then based off where the ball goes, they're going to fit a certain gap. And it requires really smart linebacking play, because you don't have one set gap. You're not always going to play A gap, or I'm always in B gap, where I just have to get my feet in the gap and my job is done. It's a lot more reactionary. It's a lot more processing speed that's needed. And I think all of the linebackers have done a pretty awesome job, but especially Ty Anthony Smith, where there's just times where it's teach tape. He's fitting, he's tempoing the ball really well. He's falling into the right gaps. He's knowing when to start to work vertically to get double teams off of defensive linemen, and then knowing when to fall back. His footwork's been really good. He's done a really good job of not working vertical immediately and allowing himself to get reached up. So I can go on and on about how well Ty Anthony Smith has played. I haven't even gone into how good he is in coverage. I think you can say similar things about Leon Lafau, and then you kind of know what you're getting from Anthony Hill. So I think the linebacker room is, as he said, it's nasty.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, and I'm going to make a point on that real quick, Victor. It has not been tested. Ohio State did not have to get into a lot of their air raid stuff. We haven't really even seen, we've seen, hate to be rude, I mean, you've seen the JV version of that. You've seen some spread concepts and air raid concepts, but not the type of athletes that we're going to, see coming up very, very soon. It is really fun to see PK's defense now. A lot of people freaked out after 2021 and panicked and wanted PK gone immediately, because you're giving up 50 plus points to Kansas, and other teams are marching up and down on the field, or marching up and down the field during second halves. So you kind of you're wanting out of that. Well, hey, if you looked at anything that PK has done, his defenses get a lot better and very, very quickly. You talked about it requiring very, very smart linebacker play, and that is what you're seeing out of Texas now from multiple guys. So it is fun to see with, and no offense to Washington. I mean, heck, they went 2-0 against us between 2022 and 2023. But he doesn't have the type of athletes that he has at Texas and those Washington defenses, and he had some pretty good Washington defenses back in the day. So it's fun to see, maybe not the ceiling of a PK defense, but, there's still some, like we said, this is going to be an experimental last half hour. So it's fun to see what they're working on. For me, I agree with Pack. I would like to see Littleton out there. I do think the linebacker room is nasty. Few minutes on the on the defensive line rather here, Pack, before we wrap it up for this Thursday night show. But talk to me, who's impressed you the most on the defensive line? Is there anybody that you'd like to see a little bit more of? Yeah,
I've really been impressed by Cole Brevard, obviously. Levon Johnson played against Sam Houston, and there's a couple reps where he looks a lot quicker than I remember. I remember looking at the Maryland tape last year, and it wasn't someone who I thought was going to be super valuable on pass downs, but I think he's done a really good job. He's clearly added some pass rush moves in there. I saw him use a rip off of a dip, so stuff that you don't typically see from defensive linemen. So I think he's done a really good job of improving his package and becoming more of a well-rounded player. Murad Watson's played really well. I think in general, the defensive line's done a good job in pretty much everything. And then Brad Spence looks like a rocket shot out of a cannon every time I watch him. Off the end, he's got such incredible get off and speed. So I've been impressed with him. I just think it's about getting him out there more often, whether that's by, like I've been saying, getting him out as a linebacker and letting him play downhill, or if you can figure out ways to get him out there next to Colin Simmons, whatever that is. I think he's been really, really good as an edge rusher. I think Ethan Burke's been really good. I think he's had to have to do a lot of different things where, especially against Sam Houston State, there's a couple snaps where they're having him peel off the edge and get into coverage and play a running back or go play a zone. And I think he's done a good job there. So I think just in general, a lot of the defensive line's been impressive, but I mean, those would be the 5 or 6 names, which is a lot that I would talk about.
Good problem to have, brother. I like that we're having to trot out a lot of defensive lineman names. We inside the program, not inside the program, but around the program, we thought that Texas, the defensive line would be a plus at season's end. I know that Eric has said that on numerous occasions over on the forums of Inside Texas. You just didn't know exactly maybe who steps up and how it looks. You had a lot of guys. Some of these guys are in contract years, playing to get their name called next April. So you're going to see some of these guys, and then some of them are youth that are just raw and just don't have the experience. You know what I mean? So it's a nice mix and match of talent and, youth, talent, and experience. I think same type of situation we've kind of had the last couple of years. And I think much earlier than people thought, it's like, wow, this Texas defensive line handled the run game of Ohio State pretty well. Again, mentioned that they kind of got us on one drive where they did a pretty good job. I think that was on their first touchdown score. But even then we made it really, really hard on them. And again, I think this defensive line just continues to get better and better. Ethan Burke, talking about playing with discipline, he seems to always be in the right spots. Very, very smart young man. Love watching Ethan, man, and his development's been fun to follow. But, overall, I think Murad Watson has got a crazy amount of upside. It's going to be fun to see him continue to progress. I'm glad that we get to hold on to him for a little while. Cole Brevard, man, it's superstar so far on the interior for Texas. He's going to have a big couple of weeks coming up. Obviously the edge room is the edge room. Still waiting for the sacks to kind of go crazy. But in my opinion, it's just a matter of time because you're gonna have some of these coordinators that just want to throw the football, have to throw the football because maybe Texas is playing better offense, putting up some points and put them in catch-up mode. Overall, the defense is going to keep Texas, in my opinion, in every single football game that we play going through the rest of the year. Obviously, you look at the struggles of a Florida offense. I think Oklahoma has a fun offense. I don't think it's overly impressive as far as going to just blow an elite defense away. And I'm not trying to slander because it was a lot better offense than it was last year, and I'm a big fan of Ben Arbuckle. I think John Material's got a lot of heart, but again, with that offensive line and lack of ground game, I'm not afraid of that offense by any means. And so looking forward, hey, Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt and Diego's rolling. But you still got to like Texas defense and the the talent, the athleticism that we have. And then later in the year, I mean, you got some fun matchups, but we're going to be in games via this defense, guys, and hopefully the offense got great special teams. Touch on that, Pack. I mean, it hasn't had any pressure kicks yet for Mr. Shipley, but when you have the last name Shipley and you're in burnt orange, like you're going to hit a couple of clutch ones. I'm just saying. We're speaking it into existence. Obviously, I'm calling Kangaroo Jack at punter. He's crushing it. So yeah, special teams play is going to be a plus. We got a lot going in two of the phases, and the other one's it's getting closer. And again, that's not overreacting to Sam Houston State, but we're trusting in Sark, baby. Anything else, Pack, for the people before let them get out of here?
Yeah, I think actually against Sam Houston State, which I think is a good dusting off in preparation for Oklahoma. They ran some concepts with spies against the Sam Houston quarterback, whose name I'm blanking on, but they ran what people in the Saban family will call odd mirror, where they're playing with a head up nose and then 5 techniques, and then 2 guys walked up, whether those backers, and then they send one. They drop 2 guys, and one of the guys drop and becomes a spy, and an aggressive spy where once you break the pocket, it's time to go hunt the quarterback. They did that against Sam Houston State. They ran a couple simulated pressures where they were going to play cover 1 and they were going to have the other dropper play off the quarterback. They did that with Colin Simmons a couple times, and so gives you a good preview for what Texas might do against Oklahoma, especially because I think the corners and the DBs are going to be able to cover Oklahoma, where you could see a little bit more man coverage against them, just because Mateer is such a threat with his legs. You could see more of this spy stuff where they're simulating a little bit more and then dropping an edge to be able to spy, or they're running odd mirror, whatever it is. I think you could see a little bit more of that against OU, which I think Texas is going to have a good game plan for OU, and I think that is now 2.5 weeks basically.
Yeah, part of me is curious because I dang sure know, obviously, that Oklahoma had Texas installed at some point in the last 4 days. I guarantee it. Did Texas do the same? With all due respect to Florida, as far as for our defense, did we go ahead and have a day or 2 of Oklahoma prep? I'm not sure. Just my speculation, my curiosity, but I would, just because I think Florida's offense is a little bit easier to prepare for than what you're saying. You're going to have to run double spies at the time. You're going to be creative, because you're never just going to be like, oh, hey, John, here's the spy. This is exactly where it's at. You're probably going to see 3, 4, maybe 5 different guys act as spy throughout that game. And so, and also, I mean, it's Red River, and it's tough because you got to win the game in the swamp first, but I would like if we got ahead of the curve a little bit, because I know that they're doing it. That's the biggest point. But yeah, guys, I really appreciate y'all being here in the comments, man. Y'all lit it up tonight. If you haven't done so, go like this video, man. Go like it now. Go subscribe immediately to Old Inside Texas 2. Turn on the subscription, man. That way you can throw the promo up one more time. That way you guys can absolutely just see all the content. You've got the Girl Herd, you've got In the Weeds, you've got everybody on here all week long. And so, yeah, come check it out. Bye weeks are tough, but this bye week, we've got a crazy slate of SEC football games. You got the Ryder Cup, which is always fun, and plenty to talk about with Texas football, especially here on Inside Texas. So thank you all again for being here. Come back. I mean, we're here, Wednesday around the league at 7, me and Pac next Thursday again. So hope to see y'all all back on the show. All right. So like the video. Go do it now. See y'all next time.